Hello and welcome to the YBMB Show, the show that we do live Monday, Wednesday, Friday at midday. And many of you follow us now, whether you catch it live or watch it after. We do get thousands of views and lots of nice comments, so thank you for that. And I tend to talk about body and tips about the body on Monday, talk about Mindset Wednesday and business on Friday. And so today I read something yesterday and I thought, let's have a little talk about this. Is COVID making us work harder? And I suppose the first thing to say is here I am on a Friday, the start of the Easter weekend. So happy Easter, early happy Easter to everybody. And yet it just feels like a normal day really, doesn't it? So I think that's the first thing, is that all of our days sort of blend into one. So we're all getting a bit stir crazy and want to do something different. I posted a throwback just now on an amazing party that I went to in Mykonos a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I think. And God, life seems so different now. But back on to, is COVID making us work harder? Well, I read this thing yesterday that said that UK workers believe that they are working 25% harder than they were pre-pandemic. And I thought, let me just have a little delve into that and see if there's any objective evidence of that, because I wanted to have a look first of all before delving into what might be the hints and tips if you feel like you're overworked. And so I had a look, and the first thing I looked at, or I came across anyway, was some information which is taken across the board of both the US and Europe, and it looks at the business tools that are used online, and somehow it measures the number of hours that people are signed on to these business tools, actively working on them. And what it did is it looked at the total number of hours, the total numbers of hours in millions per month over the last 12 months, and then compared it to the previous 12 months. And it told a different story. What it said is in January 21, 565 million hours were spent on those systems. These are business systems online for January. This is in the UK. And yet in January 2020, the number was higher. It was 628 million hours were spent on these systems. So, that would look like actually we're not working as hard, wouldn't it? Because 20% less time spent on these traditionally used systems. And they're things like, Microsoft Teams and ones like that. So they're all common. So, it made me question, so are we really working harder then? So then I thought I'd have a look at the unemployment stats, because obviously it's one thing to say less hours are being spent online, but how many people are actually spending those hours? So then I looked at the unemployment stats, and where we are now compared to this time last year is there's 730,000 unemployed people, and that's 1% more than there was this time last year. So we've gone from 3.9% to 5% unemployed. So although it's a large number, it's not like that significantly larger. But of course, the main thing is the furlough. There are still, apparently, according to the stats, 11 million jobs in the UK furloughed. These are people on the payroll. And so once you start looking at that, then you say, well, okay, maybe that explains why there's less people using these systems, because you've got 11,730,000 people less in the UK workforce than you had this time last year. So now you'd think, okay, so we must be doing less. But then how do you measure that? Well, you look at productivity, you look at growth, and you look at what's going on in UK business and around the world as well. And if you start to look at the indices, if you look at the FTSE, and if you look at the indices, particularly in the US, what you'll see is that they're well on their way back to pre-COVID levels. In fact, in the US, they've vastly exceeded in some cases. The NASDAQ, for example, has gone well above the pre-COVID level. And even here in the UK, the FTSE 250 is almost up there. And the FTSE 100 is a bit slower, but that's nearly up there as well. So that would suggest, therefore, that we're not doing less. In fact, we plummeted in terms of the value of those businesses a year ago, but climbed our way up, and that doesn't sort of happen by accident. It happens with a lot of effort and activity. So that would suggest that where we are now is almost at pre-COVID levels in terms of productivity and value, but we've got this significantly less number of people actually doing the work. And I then sort of started to do some calculations. What I did was I took the total number of hours that have been worked on those systems now, and I divided it by the number of non-furloughed active workforce. And then I compared that to the same calculation a year ago. And what it came up with is that active workers now, and this includes all levels, ranging from business owners and bosses all the way down to the most junior people, but active workers now are spending on average 35 hours on these systems per week, whereas this time last year it was only 22 hours. So there, in a nutshell, I think the stats, and it is difficult with stats because they can be tweaked in so many different ways and interpreted in so many different ways. But that's how I've looked at it very simply. And it demonstrates to me that the people that are in active employment at the moment we're all using technology, obviously, as we are now. They are spending more hours, significantly more hours, 2 days a week equivalent more than they were this time last year. So that proves that the people that are working longer hours, I think. So there's also the other question, of course, which is, because that's stressful, obviously, but it's also stressful, isn't it? If you're not working and you want to. So if you are part of that furloughed group or the unemployed group, and you really badly want to be productive, and for a year now almost you've been unemployed and feeling unproductive, and obviously if you're furloughed, then there are restrictions about what you can do. Both sides are undesirable, to say the least. So what I've got here for the second part of this live here is some tips which are not just, that I would use for pandemic and COVID times, but any time really if you feel overworked. So I've got 6 top tips here, and I hope they're going to be useful. So the first one, it's like anything really. Firstly, actually look at tracking your time. Where is your time actually going? Our time is our most precious resource. I love getting this thing out when I talk about time, because unlike this egg timer that I could sort of turn back like that, with our life and with our time, you can't, can you? So there's the time going through now, and you're never ever going to be able to get that time back. You might be able to prolong it. I've talked about longevity before, but you can't get your time back. So I think it's a really important subject to look at. How you're spending your time. So the first thing I would say is to get a baseline. How do you do that? Well, you just got to every hour write down what you've done in that previous hour and just do it for a couple of days and get a baseline of exactly what you're doing and where you're spending your time. Because one of the big time stealers, for example, is jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing, because every time you get interrupted, you sort of waste a bit of time coming off of that thought process and going on to the next thing, and then you take a bit of time warming up to get into the next thing. So the gaps between interruptions really is a time stealer. So it's really good to block big lumps of time and dedicate them, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But tracking your time, the first is the first point. Get a baseline of exactly how long you are spending on things, because you might be really surprised and find that although you feel overworked, it's because you keep getting interrupted and picking up phone calls and being too accessible. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is to consider your blueprint. What I mean by that is, how do you think it should be, or how would you like it to be? Because when someone says, oh, I just work too much, too many hours or whatever, obviously the unspoken thing there is compared to what they expect it to be. Their idea of working too much might be, they like to work only 9 to 5 and they're working 9 to 6. Because someone else who works 9 to 6, for example, might be thinking, wow, I'm having really short days at the moment. Normally I work 9 till 10 at night, So think about how you would ideally want it and how you think it ought to be. Firstly, consider your blueprint of how it ought to be. Just do a double check on, is that realistic? And then secondly, really think about, well, how would I like it to be? So often I talk to people and they tell me, their days are not their own. They have no time. They can never get to do the things that they want to do, see the people they want to see. This is pre-pandemic. And I say to them, well, how would you like it to be? And they often say, oh, well, I would, in an ideal, and I sort of say, well, what would be an ideal day? They say, well, in an ideal day, I'd get up, I might have breakfast, I might have this, that, or the other. I'd have breakfast with my children. I might do this. I might go and see a friend. And I say, well, so make it that way then. How could you make it that way? And you sometimes see pennies drop where people go, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I could. And then they start to, change their time around and they take back control. And like I say, you have to take control of your prized asset, which is your time. Contrary to what people might think about it being their house or their money or whatever, it's your time. So that's the second thing. Think about how you want it to be. Consider an ideal schedule for yourself. And then after that, have a go at rescheduling your day, because now you know how you're spending it and where you're wasting it. Now, the second thing is how you want to spend your time. Now have a look at your priorities. I'm going to come to expectations of bosses and clients and all that at the moment, because I realise that sometimes you have other people pulling your strings. We all do. But firstly, it's important to get to grips with what you can control. And so that third thing is to schedule according to your priorities, because don't forget that only you will know your priorities. Only you will know what you really need to get done. And some of the tricks for scheduling are things like, getting up early, which I know lots of people, when I say this to people, first of all, they say, oh, I'm not a morning person, I'm a nighttime person. The point is you can't really get a lot done at night. Most people can't. And so, you do fritter away time at night. There's stuff to watch on telly, yeah, but, nowhere to go. And it can't be, there's not a lot productive that gets done at night time after 10 o'clock. So try going to bed earlier, getting up earlier, and winning the day by sort of doing a plan and getting one of these tasks done. But whatever it is, schedule according to your priorities first of all, and make sure the things that you want to get done are in that schedule. And this brings me then to the fourth really important point, which is once you've done that, because you've got to be clear about your priorities clearly, but once you've done that, you've got to tell people what your priorities are and when you are and when you are not available, because otherwise people will just contact you when they want to, because they won't know what your priorities are and they will be working according to their priorities, won't they? So they'll think, oh God, I must ring so-and-so, expect you to pick the phone up, ask you to jump on a Zoom. Whereas if you make it clear, to your colleagues, especially to your work colleagues, but even your family members as well. Okay, so between this time and that time, I'm not going to pick the phone up. I'm not going to take any interruptions. I spend 2 solid hours, 10 till 12 and 1 till 3 and, 4 till 6, getting my main activities done. So if you want to contact me, here's the time to do it. One of the things that I've introduced for a lot of people, who work on my program, and I've helped them with their scheduling, is the idea of a sort of a bit of an open Zoom room, like a clinic, where you say, okay, well, especially if you deal with lots of people and you have lots of customer or colleague questions, then you can, just designate a time where you're at your Zoom and people could just come into the waiting room. You let them in almost like you're in the office and they're just sort of waiting at your door and you ask them if they want to come in. So letting people know what your priorities are is amazing, the impact, because once they know that, you want to be left alone for a bit to get stuff done, you're surprised at how accommodating people will be. But they won't know unless you tell them. So you've got to tell them. Then the fifth thing that I want to say out of the 6 is, see if you can take control of the demarcation between your work time and your non-work time. Obviously, in an ideal world, what you do is you have a space in your home which now you've designated to work. It doesn't need to be a full-blown study. It can just be, obviously, a room that you allocate for certain activities. But I would suggest if you have got that, a spare bedroom or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a big room, that it's shut away somewhere and you literally have all your work paraphernalia, your laptop and everything there. And rather than carrying your things about with you, your books, your laptops, etc., under your arm from room to room to room, keep it there. And when you close it, that's like your demarcation done. Leave your work phone there and that's work done until you come back half an hour later or an hour later, once you've had a break or walk or whatever, or till the next morning. If you can't do that because you just don't have the space, or, you've got children there and that's really hard, I think, again, you've got to just be more resourceful and start thinking about what other ways could you get some peace and quiet and some work time. Obviously, now the weather is getting better. I've seen lots of people working outside. I know it's difficult when it's cold, but maybe even a friend's garden or Just think about, could you do your calls when you're out, when you're walking, or is there like a park bench where you could just get your laptop and sort of do a bit of work there for a bit? You're just basically trying to take control. And if you really, really can't do that, then you've got to sort of sit your family members down, the people you live with, and say, look, I've got to get this done. It's for the good of everybody. So let's all agree at such and such time, it's quiet time. I do my work. If it's young kids, they do their schoolwork or whatever it is, and just have some boundaries and have a plan together as a family, so that you let them know as well as your co-workers. So it's just trying to be as resourceful as you can. And I know it's not ideal, and I know there's a million reasons why it's really difficult, but these things have to be done if we go back to the basics and why we're actually talking about this, which is, you feel incredibly overworked. And then we come to the final one, which is, okay, so we've done all the things that you can take control of, but now we've got this thing of, there just is too much to do. You have unreasonable expectations being thrown at you either by clients or by your boss or by your co-workers or everybody. This is a more difficult one because obviously you don't have full control over it, and everybody wants to keep their job and all of that. I do understand it, but I think the thing to remember is that these bosses and these clients are human beings too. And if you can demonstrate that you have done all the things that I've just mentioned, and you've completely addressed all the things that you can control, then it's time to have a conversation. It's time to have a conversation and to say, look, can we talk about my time schedule? I've got, there's a number of priorities that are being thrown at me. I really want to do a great job for you if you're talking to the client, or for, as part of our team if you're talking to your boss. But I just want to lay them out for you in terms of the priorities, and see what we can do about extending the time scale. And, like I say, if you speak about it like that and you say that you just want to have a conversation to see if they've got any ideas or ways to work with you, then you will find, normally speaking, 9 times out of 10, that people are very understanding, that everybody's in the same boat, and you should be able to work a way forward. So I would do all the things that you can control first, and then I would bring other people in and have a nice conversation with them, because I'm sure they'll be feeling the same too. And even if that conversation is, yeah, we all feel the same and it's really difficult, but look, in order for the business to survive, we've just got to do this, but, there's a short period of time while we do it, then at least, because that's the other thing as well that I didn't mention, is that people not taking their holiday, at least book your holiday slots in, and tell people when you're going to be away. Obviously clear it with your boss and everything, but at least you've got some time to look forward to where you truly do take that time off and you close everything down, and you do have, even if you're at home, you just have some time where you just, you recharge your batteries. So those are the tips if you feel overworked. Now, at the beginning of this, I did talk about the 11 million people that are furloughed, and also the 730,000 unemployed, if those are the stats that are most recently published. Now, if you go back to these tips, you'll see that a lot of these are still relevant, because in this case, you would be underworked and you want to be productive, and you're probably feeling, a combination of frustrated, bored, underutilized. That can be very demoralizing. And so what do you do about it? Because there's only so much that, we can fill the time in, of course. But in school, and there's lots to do around the house, and obviously if you've got children, there's homeschooling and everything. But at the end, we need to feel productive, don't we? So I would actually have another look at the tips that I've just said and do exactly the same thing, but from a different viewpoint. So for those of you who are underemployed at the moment, number one, track your time, get a baseline, see where you're spending your time. Number two, think about how you ideally want it. Now, yes, I know how you ideally want it would be to have, your job back, for example. But if that can't be the case, then can you look for other employment? Can you start a business? Can you learn some new things? Can you start, helping others in terms of a charitable activity? There will be many things you can do. And this is still a good time to look for new jobs. It's still a good time to start businesses. People are starting businesses in their hundreds of thousands still every month. And also there are still many thousands of job vacancies out there. So it's still a good time to look, and you have to treat that like you would a job. Treat getting a new job like a job. So schedule then according to your priorities. And if that's your priority, then make sure that you still have a schedule for the day when you're going to be carrying out that activity. And that will involve obviously reaching out for new opportunities or starting the new business or whatever it is. Those are subject to other lives that I've done. And I can do those again, actually, if anyone wants me to. And then having a clear demarcation, as I said, and telling your colleague, in this case, it wouldn't be colleagues, it would be telling the people that you live with that this is what your priorities are and this is how you're going to be spending your time. So exactly the same thing, creating the demarcation and then creating a space where you can actually do this work. So all of that is very similar, to be honest. It's still taking a grip of your time. It's still working according to your priorities. And it means that you've got some real focus and that you can move forward. And the only thing different, I would say, here in the number 6 is that, whereas what I said before was go and have a conversation with your boss or your clients and explain you've got too much to do. If you really have not enough to do, then this is definitely the time to learn. It really is. And where do you learn? Well, we know that there's so much available for free, so many free courses and free resources online. I mean, you can literally do 4 qualifications if you go and seek them out online. There's so much free stuff to learn. There's so many books to read. You're never going to be able to read all of them. So pick a subject, decide you're going to learn and get more experience and more expertise, and go and learn that. And then if you need to take some qualifications, you can maybe even do that as well and get yourself a whole new skill and prepare yourself for a new career. So I think the last thing I wanted to say is that, all of this time passes, whether we, do these things or not. So this time is, just constantly going, the time passes. So it's up to us really what we choose to do with it. And I think the first thing is to take control, like I've said. And then secondly, just to end with saying that there is always a silver lining to these things. So if you're overworked, what's that forced us all to do? It's forced us to be more productive. It's forced us to be more time aware. We've got things done. We as a nation have got things done anyway. Even with fewer resource, we've made things happen. All of us have. So we now realise just how resourceful we can be when we really need to be. So that's a good thing. It's made us all a lot more familiar with technology, and remote working again makes us more effective. It means that we can build things quicker, do things quicker, make things happen quicker and more effectively. We can check in with our colleagues, our friends, our family whenever we want, much more quickly, because everybody can do that now. So that's a silver lining really if we're overworked, that we have become also more resourceful and more efficient. And if we're underworked, then it's given us time to think about what we really want to do. Many people have changed career already. Many people have got side hustles, so they've developed new businesses and new interests on the side. Many people have learned new skills. Many people have got more fit. And all of those things we support you with on the YBMB program, Your Body Means Business program. And on that, I will teach you how to address your physical fitness, your mental fitness, and then your business, your career, whether that's getting a new job, getting a promotion in your current job, being more effective in your current job, starting a new business, growing your business, whatever it is. And you get this great peer group on the same journey to help you too. So that's it from me. That's almost 30 minutes. I hope it was useful. So yes, we are working harder, but we're working smarter as well. And like I say, there will be a silver lining to all of this, and we'll look back, I'm sure, and recognise that, even if it doesn't feel like it now. Hope that was useful, and have